Here we go again. In our 6th week of dealing with the Gospel according to John, and we're in that 4th and 5th chapters of writing and this book in our Christian library. And I haven't explained that. I keep for a while, so let me remember my understanding that the meaning of the word Bible is it's Biblia. It means library. This is the Bible is it contains the Jewish library of books and the Christian library of books, but it is just different books, volumed in one, which contains 66 books in the library. And so these 3 stories in the library book called The Gospel According to John is, as you've been able to tell in these 3 weeks, are favorites of mine. Jesus stayed with the Samaritans, which was a no-no. He included Roman centurion in divine love. And now in chapter 5, verses 1 to 18, we have the story of Jesus healing an invalid at the pool of Bethesda during the festival of the Jews. Now, this man was described as having no faith. Didn't make any difference to Jesus. Jesus' act of healing, this act of mercy, was pure grace, unearned, unmerited. Now, in the first 2 stories, with the Samaritans and the Roman officer, the consequence was the same. The Samaritan woman and the Roman officer told their story, and many believed. Not so with the 3rd story. The establishment of the Jewish community were gathered for a festival. They were not awed, nor were they impressed by the healings, because healings and miracles were not unusual events. They were rather common. Even though the Jewish community wasn't awed by the healing, that didn't mean there wasn't any response. For what made the headline of the day, if there would have been a newspaper around this area, the headline of the day was Jesus healed on the Sabbath. The Sabbath was the day of rest, according to the law. At the time of Jesus' ministry, the identity of the Jewish community were marked with 3 practices. First of all, circumcision. Secondly, clean and unclean food. And thirdly, observance of the Sabbath. Those were the practices that held the Jewish community's life together. And Jesus healing on the Sabbath was a no-no. For carrying a mat was work, not rest, and this act violated Sabbath law. Now, follow the story. As a consequence of an act of pure grace, the healing of a non-believer, an invalid, the Jewish leaders persecuted Jesus under the authority of the law. Listen to John 5:18. This is why the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also called God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Needless to say, the establishment was ticked off. They were rather angry. Instead of celebrating that an invalid was healed, they persecuted Jesus on the basis of Sabbath law created by human intelligence. Get the finesse of John's story? You see, some of us were a part of the 5-month study of the book of Romans, and Paul's message in 60 AD was that humans are not justified by works. They're not justified by the law, therefore earning salvation. Rather, humans are justified by faith, a grace event where one recognizes and accepts divine love, amazing grace in their own lives. 30 years later, John agrees with Paul as he includes this story of the healing of a man of no faith, a gift of pure grace. And in this story, we see again one of the principles and the foundation of the gospel according to John, that the Christ event means that the authority of determination, what is the nature and will of God, has been transferred from the law to the Christ event. And this story illustrates it as just Jesus disobeyed the Sabbath law and healed on that Sabbath day. Now, this third story shares what John 3:16 really looks like in the flesh. He picks up Paul's idea that adherence to the law can be a stumbling block, standing in the way of preventing one from experiencing divine love. Law can get in the way of love. And indeed, right before their very eyes, the Samaritan woman believed. The Roman officer believed. And each shared the story of Jesus, God in the flesh, the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity. Remember those words we read from Hark the Herald Angels Sing. However, rather than seeing and believing, as was the case in the first two stories, the Jews were anchored in the law. Seeing did not lead to believing. It led to rejection and persecution. The law prevailed over an act of pure grace. Let me say it again. The law prevailed over an act of pure grace. Now, we're concluding these three stories placed in the Gospel according to John after that Gospel in a miniature of John 3:16. John, in putting the message together, wanted to illustrate what it meant on Main Street. The first story addresses the sin of racism. Prejudging another because of the architecture of their genes falls short of the divine love revealed in the Christ event. Racism has no place in eternal life. The second story addresses the sin of exclusion. Every human being is a child of God, regardless of the uniform they're wearing, the language they speak, their life situation, their life predicament. No one is excluded from divine love. The third story addresses the sin of idolatry. Idols created by human beings, including the law, are not to be worshipped, nor should they become the determiner of the nature and the will of God. You see, in these three stories, John puts the message together to make it so clear that John 3:16 is not an idea. It's a way of life. On the streets where Jesus lived, and on the streets where you and I live. No place for racism, no place for exclusion, no place for the idolatry. For indeed, divine love is eternal life now. Think about these questions. First of all, what are the laws of religious communities in 2022 which prevent us from experiencing divine love right before our very eyes? Secondly, who are those we believe do not deserve the gift of pure grace in their lives? And then, what are the most common idols of our day? Finally, are the privileges of racism in the United States today so entrenched that they cannot be overcome? A lot to think about. Thank you for being a part of our journey.